Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the staggering mega-project plan for Great Nicobar and exploring exactly what an ancient living island stands to lose. You see, this isn't just about building a new port or laying down a runway. The government is proposing a complete city-scale transformation of an incredibly delicate living ecosystem. So we're going to look closely at the facts, the financials, and the real ecological stakes of this monumental proposal.
Let's start by zooming out for a second and asking a really crucial question. What actually happens when you try to manufacture a megacity right inside an ancient living rainforest? Because Great Nicobar is definitely not just some empty plot of land waiting to be developed. She's part of a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve at the very southern tip of the Andaman-Nicobar archipelago. It's totally covered in tropical rainforest, and get this, it sits directly in seismic zone V. That makes it one of the most active earthquake and tsunami zones on the entire planet. So, right out of the gate, we're looking at this massive clash between a pristine, self-repairing ecosystem and heavy, concrete, international infrastructure.
All right, part one, the Great Nicobar Megaproject.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of what's coming to this remote island, we've got to talk money. And the projected cost? It's honestly eye-watering. We're talking somewhere between 81,000 and 92,000 crore rupees. To put that into perspective, that's practically the budget you'd need to build and operate almost 100 brand new AIIMS hospitals across the country. And a huge chunk of this, over 12,000 crore just for the port alone, is proposed as direct government support.
Then there's the massive demographic shock being proposed here. Right now, Great Nicobar's population is pretty small, sitting right around 8,000 residents. But the project estimates bringing in anywhere from 3.36 lakh to 6.5 lakh new people. Think about that for a second. It's literally like asking your own neighborhood to suddenly house 40 to 80 times more people, basically overnight. The sudden strain on water, food, healthcare, and waste management systems is going to be completely unprecedented for an island of this size.
So what does this actually look like on the ground? Well, it's a four-part mega proposal that's set to cover roughly 18% of Great Nicobar, effectively turning a wild island into a manufactured city. First is a massive international transshipment port at Galathea Bay, which actually requires stripping away the area's protected wildlife sanctuary status just to make it possible. Second, a greenfield international airport for both civilian and defense use. Third, a 450 MVA gas and solar power system, which, by the way, is enough juice to power over 4 lakh homes. And finally, a massive new township to support the whole shebang.
Moving on to part 2, a living climate shield. We have to remember that this island is a vital, living climate shield in a rapidly warming world. The forests naturally hold carbon, and the mangroves soften extreme wave energy. But what makes it truly special are the species that exist literally nowhere else. Giant leatherback turtles cross entire oceans just to nest at exactly Galathea Bay. The Nicobar megapode builds its specific incubation mounds from the rotting leaves right there. The plan also calls for moving over 16,000 living coral colonies, which are notoriously sensitive to being handled or facing changes in water quality. And the rare Nicobar palm, you won't find it anywhere else on Earth.
Now, to offset the massive loss of forest, which officially involves diverting over 130 square kilometers, and independent ecologists estimate could mean losing up to a crore trees, the government is relying on a legal tool called compensatory afforestation. But here's the absolute kicker. They're planning to plant these replacement trees 2,000 kilometers away in a completely different biome in Haryana.
I think this analogy really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the fatal flaw of trying to replace millions of years of unique, highly specialized island evolution with a mainland tree plantation. You simply cannot recreate Great Nicobar's rainfall, its rich soil, its rivers, or its endemic species by planting a bunch of trees in Haryana. It just doesn't work that way.
Which brings us to part 3, tribes facing erasure.
We absolutely have to zoom in on the human cost here. We're talking about indigenous communities whose ancestral ties and literal survival are entirely intertwined with the island's forests and rivers. The Shompen, for example, are an isolated group of roughly 200 to 300 people living deep in the island's interior. They fall under the highly protected classification of a particularly vulnerable tribal group, or PVTG. They rely completely on the island's river systems and depend heavily on local pandanus groves for their food. Their deep knowledge and language exist only in memory, not in textbooks.
And the stakes here couldn't possibly be higher. To give you the facts, in February 2024, 39 international genocide scholars from 13 different countries issued a stark, formal warning directly to the Indian government.
They explicitly stated that pushing this project forward, even in a limited form, carries the catastrophic risk of sudden outside contact for the Shompen. Because they've been isolated, they severely lack immunity to outside diseases, making this a terrifying prospect.
Now, officially, authorities claim that no Shompen houses are going to be physically moved. But as experts and advocates are quick to point out, true displacement goes way, way beyond just shifting physical structures. It's the sudden, deafening noise. It's the demographic overwhelm of hundreds of thousands of new people. It's the exposure to fatal diseases and the abrupt loss of access to the forests they need to survive. Plus, local tribal councils are actively disputing the consent process itself, which is actually the center of a major ongoing case in the Calcutta High Court right now.
Let's dig into Part 4, claims that fall short.
When looking at a mega project of this size, the details matter, and we really need to compare the official narrative with the reality on the ground. For instance, the government states that only 1.82% of the archipelago's forest is being diverted. Sounds small, right? Well, that's because it counts hundreds of islands. If you look at Great Nicobar herself, the project swallows up 18% of the island. And what about the claim of strategic necessity? Yes, India absolutely has legitimate security interests near the Malacca Strait, but it seriously begs the question, which parts of this massive 166 square kilometer footprint are truly for defense and which parts are just heavy commercial choices dressed up in defense language?
All right, Part 5. Who pays, who profits? Let's pull back and look at the systemic disconnect here. Why should someone living far away on the mainland even care about this remote island? Well, because billions of taxpayer rupees are subsidizing this. If the projected shipping traffic never actually materializes, or heaven forbid, an earthquake or tsunami hits this highly volatile seismic zone V island, who pays? Remember, the 2004 earthquake literally sank Indira Point by several meters. Ultimately, it's the general public that supplies the money and absorbs all the financial and environmental risk, not just some private company. And while final contracts haven't been officially awarded yet, we do know exactly who's watching. Back in 2023, 10 corporate entities submitted expressions of interest for the port. We're talking major players like Adani Ports, JSW Infrastructure, Mega Engineering, and Royal Boscalis. Now, submitting an interest doesn't guarantee they've won a contract, but it definitely raises vital questions about who actually stands to profit from a massive project where the public carries all the ultimate risk.
Finally, Part 6, 5 minutes to act. So, here's where we are. The project is currently sitting in a critical 12-month window before the really massive clearing begins. Major clearances have been granted, sure, but final contracts in live court cases are still wide open. That means right now is the strongest window to actually do something. Here are 3 high-leverage actions you can take in under 5 minutes. Number 1, sign the active petitions from groups like Save Nicobar or Survival International. Number 2, file a right to information or RTI request asking for the actual tree count methodology or the indigenous consent data to help create hard evidence. And number 3, simply tag authorities like Niti Aayog or the Ministry of Environment on social media demanding transparency and a pause on irreversible work.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Great Nicobar stores carbon, holds precious water, and shelters deeply unique cultures and species. She belongs to herself and to this planet first, long before we ever showed up with a master plan. The burden of proof absolutely belongs to those proposing to transform her. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Go ahead and dive into those action steps, and please, keep asking the hard questions.